The experience started with me driving to what used to be my place of work on the physical level, a supermarket called Tesco, the UK equivalent of Walmart or Kmart. I've had similar experiences like this before, where I would find myself working in this old job, but with variations in the layout, the staff, etc. Sometimes, as on this occasion, I would be attempting to reapply for the old job that I walked out of a year ago. When I have these old job-related experiences, I see it as the personal self wanting to cling onto what it has known, what it is familiar with, as it sometimes gets a little unnerved with this constant forging ahead into the unknown of life. So on occasion, my personal self wants to grab at its teddy bear, or comfort blanket of familiarity, and this is expressed on the real side for me as finding myself in my old job. So here I was, reapplying for this boring old 9-to-5 job, but at least on this occasion, my real awareness rather stepped into the fore and reminded my personal self how this is a job I had vacated on the physical level, and that it was best, awareness beneficial wise, to leave it alone. It was just as though the real self had infiltrated the personal self bubble of a comfort-seeking reality on the real side, and had set the personal self straight. For I had the strong impression of being my two selves simultaneously, the personal and the real self. My personal self would see sense, acknowledging the greater wisdom of the real self. I had been wearing the official Tesco uniform in preparation for my re-employment, so I was quick to remove the top jacket that bore the Tesco brand label and discard it. After doing so, I would then have the keeping and care of a little baby, and this I have experienced before too. With the baby or younger child tending to represent the little self, it was almost as though my real awareness was allaying the fear of the personal self, comforting this little self baby, a fear that had it replicate this comfort zone scene in the first place. The experience would move on now. The personal self content to remove itself from the replicated supermarket of its past job, and I was in a car and heading for another destination. I came to a very grimy and dingy location. It looked almost like a real side slum area, but it was among all this degradation that a car repair and maintenance garage was to be found. I parked my car beside the garage on the dilapidated road and exited the vehicle. A kind of crane reached over and, enclosing the car in its grip, it would transfer it into the garage for the necessary repairs, despite the rather dismal environment. The individuals manning and working at this garage had the telltale StandReal awareness signatures of Real Guides. I would wait in the garage. It wasn't an enclosed building, more an open and exposed to the elements working area. Overall, I had the impression that I had taken on a few ideas of trepidation demonstrated by the earlier scene, and perhaps a few attitudes added on top. But realizing all this, I had sought and decided on their release, as though I was readjusting the personal self, realigning it, that it was back on track and aligned with the real intent of my real awareness, as it had slipped a little in its focus, as the personal self occasionally will, and then I need to readjust it again. So the car I parked here represented my personal self, and the attitudes I wished discarded, perhaps some elements of the personal self I was facing that were rather a convoluted collection of tapline agreements that had resulted in a little attitude and fear with the personal self. Quite the pickle. That although I had decided to work through and be rid of, required the assistance of the guides. So this was basically a personal self realigning real guide garage on the real side, demonstrated with me parking my car here, and the individuals that worked here making the adjustments to it. As I waited, I would notice other individuals here also that were on their own process of awareness too. Evidently, they were here for the same reason as I. Real side, personal self realignment. The reason the whole environment seemed so very slum-like and a place of squalor, I can only suggest was as a reflection of the attitudes, agreements, and taplines everybody who came here were releasing. For you surely wouldn't want to discard all your personal self-debris and thought forms in a nice area of creation, and indeed, scuttling about the garage were these twisted, slug-like creatures that were the representation of the distorted attitudes and agreements being removed. They would slither about aimlessly, but if they came into physical contact with you, they would bite and try to latch onto you like leeches, and if attached too long, would absorb into your body. It was very much that, although these ideas were being decided upon as to their release, they still were there, and could easily reattach and reaffirm their hold on the personal self if given a chance, if agreed to. Naturally, to the personal self, these would be construed as idea temptations, thrills, or comfort zone ideas, and so on the surface, to the personal self, would seem very appealing. But here, in this real side garage, you could see them for what they really were: twisted, distorted, slug-like creatures. And so, no wonder This area of the real side was designated the place for such operations, and contained by the real guides, that it doesn't taint any other part of the real side. As we waited, we would warily keep an eye on the idea slugs, pushing them away with our booted feet if they came too close. One of these idea mini-monsters was in the form of a malformed head that kind of rolled around without a body to carry it. Some of the individuals here were using it as a soccer ball, amusing themselves in this manner, and passing the time, etc. Some of the guides were advising against this action, as though even the playing with one of these discarded ideas was placing focus and attention upon it, which was agreement also, and the reality of this possibility was demonstrated, as the head suddenly sank its teeth into one of these individuals. All the others would back away in alarm, as the head became larger to the point where it swallowed the individual whole. Seems that person had placed too much focus on the idea, and the result was as the guide warned. He was absorbed into the created reality of it, but it was just a choice, and he could always recognize his error and choose differently the very next moment if he wanted. So no big deal.